My family faked my signature to fund my sister's $150,000 wedding, but I uncovered the truth and let the law punish the mistakes they made. I used to think family meant unconditional love and support, until I discovered they had stolen my identity to fund a fairy tale that wasn't mine. My name is Ethan Miller, I'm 30 years old, and I work as a financial analyst at one of the largest banks in the city. I've always prided myself on being responsible with money, meticulous about my credit, and someone who values trust above all else. That's what made what happened next so devastating. It was a Tuesday morning in March, when everything started unraveling. I was reviewing quarterly reports at my desk, when my phone buzzed with an email notification from my bank. The subject line read, "Payment overdue notice. Immediate action required." My first thought was that it had to be a phishing scam. I hadn't missed any payments in my entire adult life. I had automatic payments set up for everything, and I checked my accounts religiously every week. But curiosity got the better of me, so I opened the email. What I saw made my blood run cold. It was a legitimate notice from my bank's loan department, stating that I was 90 days behind on a personal loan of $150,000. The loan number, my social security number, even my middle initial, everything was correct. Everything except the fact that I had never ever taken out a loan for that amount. I immediately called the bank's customer service line, my hands shaking as I dialed. After being transferred 3 times, I finally reached someone in the loan department who could access my account. "Mr. Miller," the representative said, "I show here that you took out a personal loan on December 15th for $150,000 at 8.5% interest. The loan was approved based on your employment verification and credit score. You've missed the last 3 monthly payments of $1,847 each." "That's impossible," I said, my voice getting louder than I intended. "I never applied for any loan. I need to see all the documentation immediately. I can email you the loan application and signed documents right now, sir. But I have to inform you that if payment isn't received within the next 7 days, we'll be forced to report this to credit agencies and begin collection proceedings." The email arrived within minutes. As I opened the PDF files, I felt like I was looking at evidence of my own financial murder. There was my name, my address, my social security number, my employer information, all correct. And there, at the bottom of the application, was what appeared to be my signature. But I knew with absolute certainty that I had never seen these documents before in my life. The signature looked remarkably like mine. The same flowing E at the beginning of Ethan. The same sharp angles in Miller. But there were tiny differences that only I would notice. The way the H connected to the A in my first name was slightly off. The loop in the M was too large. Someone had practiced my signature, and they'd done a damn good job of it. My mind immediately went to the only people who would have had access to documents with my real signature, my family. But that thought was so horrible, so unthinkable, that I pushed it away. There had to be another explanation. Someone must have stolen my mail, or hacked my accounts, or found old documents somehow. But as I sat there staring at the loan paperwork, pieces of a puzzle started clicking into place. 3 months ago, December 15th, the exact date of the loan, was when my family had suddenly become very excited about my sister Samantha's upcoming wedding. That was when they'd started talking about venues that seemed impossibly expensive, about hiring the best photographer in the state, about a dress that cost more than some people's cars. Samantha had been engaged to her boyfriend Jake for 2 years, but they'd always talked about having a small, simple ceremony. She was an influencer on social media, mostly focused on wedding and lifestyle content, but her following wasn't huge. She made decent money, but nothing that would support the kind of extravagant celebration my parents were suddenly planning. And my parents, Dad had been retired for 5 years after working as a mid-level manager at an insurance company, and Mom had never worked outside the home. They lived comfortably on Dad's pension and Social Security, but they certainly didn't have $150,000 lying around for a wedding. I thought about all the conversations over the past few months, how my parents kept talking about how this wedding was going to put Samantha on the map as an influencer, how it was an investment in her future, how they wanted to make sure she had everything she deserved for her special day. The more I thought about it, the more sick I felt, but I still couldn't bring myself to believe that my own parents would commit identity theft against me. There had to be some other explanation. I decided to do some investigating before I accused anyone of anything. I pulled my credit report and discovered that the loan inquiry had been made on December 10th, 5 days before the loan was approved. The inquiry had been made from a computer at the downtown branch of my bank, the same branch where my parents had their checking account. I dug deeper into my credit history and found something else disturbing. Over the past year, there had been several small inquiries into my credit, the kind that happen when someone is checking to see if you'd qualify for various types of loans. All of these inquiries had come from the same branch. My hands were shaking as I called the bank again, this time asking to speak with someone at the downtown branch where the loan had been originated. "Yes, Mr. Miller," the branch manager said when I explained the situation. "I remember your application quite well. You came in with your father to apply for the loan. Very nice family. Your father was so proud that you were helping to pay for your sister's wedding." The words hit me like a physical blow. I came in with my father? Yes, in December. You seemed a bit nervous about taking on such a large loan, but your father assured you it was the right thing to do for family. He even joked about how responsible you were with money, and how he knew you'd never miss a payment. I felt like I was going to throw up. "Can you describe the person who came in with my father?" "Well, it was several months ago, but I remember he was about your height, dark hair, professionally dressed. Your father introduced him as his son Ethan." "Why? Is there a problem?" "Yes," I said quietly. "There's a very big problem." After I hung up, I sat in my car in the bank parking lot for nearly an hour, trying to process what I'd learned. Someone had impersonated me, walked into that bank with my father, and taken out a loan for $150,000. And my father had not only been present for this identity theft, he had actively participated in it. The betrayal was so complete, so calculated, that I couldn't wrap my head around it. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision or a desperate act. This was a planned crime that had taken months to execute. Someone had studied my signature, gathered my personal information, and convinced my father to help them commit fraud. But who? Who in my family would do this to me? And then, like a lightning bolt, it hit me. I knew exactly who had done this, and why. My cousin Marcus lived about an hour away and worked in banking himself. He was about my height and build, with similar dark hair. He'd been to several family gatherings over the past year where he could have seen my signature on birthday cards or thank you notes. And he'd been suspiciously absent from all the recent conversations about Samantha's wedding, despite being invited to every other family event. But more than that, Marcus had always been jealous of the attention Samantha got in the family. He'd made snide comments about her princess treatment and how my parents would do anything for their precious daughter. I'd always thought he was just being petty, but now I wondered if he'd seen an opportunity for revenge. I called Marcus's bank and asked to speak with him, claiming to be a client. "I'm sorry," the receptionist said, "but Marcus Miller no longer works here. He was terminated last month." "Terminated? For what?" "I can't give out specific information, but I can tell you it was related to irregularities in customer accounts. Everything was starting to make sense. Marcus had lost his job, probably for financial misconduct. He was angry at my family, especially my parents and Samantha, and he had the knowledge and access to pull off identity theft. But there was still one piece of the puzzle that didn't fit: my father's involvement. Even if Marcus had approached him with this scheme, why would my father agree to participate? Why would he help someone steal from his own son? I drove straight to my parents' house, my mind racing with questions and accusations. I found them in the kitchen, looking over what appeared to be vendor invoices and receipts. Wedding planning materials were spread across the entire dining room table. "Ethan," my mother said brightly when I walked in. Perfect timing. "We were just going over the final numbers for Samantha's reception. The florist wants to add some additional arrangements, and we think it would really make the photos pop for her Instagram posts." "We need to talk," I said, setting the loan documents down on the table. "All of us." "Where's Samantha?" "She's at her dress fitting," my father said, glancing at the papers I'd brought. "What's all this about?" "This," I said, pointing to the loan application, "is about the $150,000 that someone took out in my name to pay for this wedding." The silence that followed was deafening. My mother's face went pale, and my father's expression shifted from confusion to something that looked almost like guilt. "Ethan," my mother said slowly, "what are you talking about? I'm talking about identity theft. I'm talking about fraud. I'm talking about someone forging my signature and using my credit to take out a massive loan that I knew nothing about. My father cleared his throat. Son, I think you're confused. Nobody took out a loan in your name. Really? I pulled out my phone and showed him the bank's email. Then explain this overdue notice. Explain why I'm 3 months behind on payments for a loan I never applied for. My parents exchanged a look that told me everything I needed to know. They weren't confused or surprised. They knew exactly what I was talking about. Okay, my father said finally. Maybe we need to explain some things. Yes, I said, my voice getting dangerous. I think you do. Sit down, son, my mother said, patting the chair next to her. This is more complicated than you think. I'll stand, thanks. Start talking. My father sighed heavily. Marcus came to us in December. He said he had a way to help us give Samantha the wedding she deserved, but that it would require using your credit because yours was so much better than ours. And you said yes? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He explained that you'd never have to actually pay anything back. My mother jumped in. The plan was for Samantha's wedding content to go viral, which would lead to sponsorship deals and brand partnerships. She'd make enough money to pay off the loan within a year, maybe sooner. So you decided this for me. Without asking me, without even telling me. We knew you'd say no, my father admitted. You're too conservative with money. You don't understand how influencer marketing works or how much money Samantha could make from this. You're right. I would have said no. Because it's fraud. Because it's illegal. Because you stole my identity. We didn't steal anything, my father said, his voice getting defensive. You're family. What's good for Samantha is good for all of us. What's good for Samantha? What about what's good for me? What about my credit score, my financial future, my ability to ever trust my own family again? You're being dramatic, my mother said. Once Samantha starts making real money from her influencer career, she'll pay back every penny, with interest. And what if she doesn't? What if this magical influencer success doesn't happen? What if I'm stuck with $150,000 in debt that I never agreed to take on? That won't happen, my father said firmly. Marcus showed us all the projections. Samantha's follower count is already growing because of the wedding content she's been posting. The big brands are starting to notice her. I stared at my parents in disbelief. You trusted Marcus, who just got fired from his job for financial misconduct, by the way, to make financial projections about Samantha's social media career? Marcus got fired? My mother asked, looking confused. Yes, last month. For irregularities in customer accounts, which means he's probably done this before. The room fell silent again. I could see doubt creeping into my parents' faces for the first time. Even if Marcus lied to you about his credentials, I said, that doesn't change what you did. You committed identity theft against your own son. You forged my signature. You used my personal information to take out a loan without my knowledge or consent. We were trying to help the family, my father said weakly. You were trying to help Samantha. At my expense, literally. Samantha is your sister, my mother said. Family helps family. Family doesn't commit crimes against each other. Family doesn't steal from each other. Family doesn't forge each other's signatures and ruin each other's credit. Your credit isn't ruined, my father protested. The loan is legitimate. As long as the payments get made, there's no problem. The payments that I'm supposed to make? For a wedding I had no say in planning, for a loan I never agreed to take? Well, my mother said hesitantly, we were hoping you'd understand and help out with the payments until Samantha's career takes off. I felt something snap inside me. You were hoping I'd just accept that you stole from me and then voluntarily pay for your crime. It's not stealing when it's family, my father said, but his voice lacked conviction. Yes, it is. It's exactly stealing. It's also fraud, identity theft, and forgery, all of which are felonies. You wouldn't turn in your own family, my mother said, looking shocked. I don't know what I'm going to do yet, but I know what I'm not going to do. I'm not going to pay 1 penny of this loan. I'm not going to let my credit be destroyed by your scheme. And I'm not going to pretend this is okay just because we share DNA. I gathered up the loan documents and headed for the door. Ethan, wait, my father called. Let's talk about this reasonably. We can work something out. You want to work something out? Here's what's going to happen. You're going to contact the bank and explain that this loan was taken out fraudulently. You're going to take full responsibility for the debt. And you're going to pray that I don't decide to press criminal charges. We can't afford $150,000, my mother said, tears starting to form in her eyes. You should have thought about that before you spend $150,000 that wasn't yours. But what about Samantha's wedding? Everything's already booked. The deposits are paid. The invitations went out last week. That's not my problem anymore. I walked out of their house and didn't look back. But I could hear my mother crying and my father cursing Marcus's name as the door closed behind me. Over the next few days, I threw myself into building a case. I contacted a lawyer who specialized in identity theft and fraud. I gathered every piece of documentation I could find. I requested security footage from the bank, phone records showing calls between Marcus and my parents, and email trails that might prove premeditation. What I discovered was even worse than I'd imagined. The scheme had been in planning for over 6 months. Marcus had been systematically gathering information about my financial situation, my credit score, even my daily routines. He'd been to my apartment twice when I wasn't home, using a key that my parents had given him in case of emergency. My lawyer, Jennifer Walsh, was both impressed and horrified by the scope of the fraud. This isn't just identity theft, she told me. This is a sophisticated conspiracy that involved multiple people and months of planning. The fact that your parents were willing participants makes it even more serious. What are my options? Well, you can report it to the police and let them handle the criminal charges. You can sue your parents and Marcus in civil court for damages, or you can try to work out some kind of private settlement. But I have to warn you, if you choose the private route, there's no guarantee they'll actually follow through on any agreement. What would you recommend? Honestly, I'd recommend going the criminal route. What they did was serious, and there need to be consequences. Plus, having a police report and criminal charges will make it much easier to get the loan removed from your credit report, even if it means my parents could go to jail. Ethan, they committed multiple felonies against you. They stole your identity, forged your signature, and defrauded a bank. The fact that they're your parents doesn't make it any less serious. I knew she was right. But the thought of sending my parents to prison made me sick. Still, I couldn't just let this slide. They had shown absolutely no remorse, no understanding of how seriously they'd violated my trust. They still seemed to think I should just go along with their plan because family helps family. Before I made any final decisions, I wanted to talk to Samantha. She was supposed to get married in 3 weeks, and I wanted to know how much she knew about where the money for her wedding was coming from. I found her at a coffee shop near her apartment, scrolling through wedding photos on her laptop. She looked up when I sat down across from her, and her face immediately brightened. Ethan, I'm so glad you're here. I wanted to show you the proofs from our engagement shoot. They turned out amazing, and I think they're really going to help boost my follower count before the wedding. Samantha, we need to talk about your wedding funding. Her smile faltered slightly. What do you mean? I mean the $150,000 that Mom and Dad somehow came up with to pay for everything. Do you know where that money came from? She shifted uncomfortably in her chair. They said they'd been saving for years, that they wanted to give me the wedding of my dreams. They lied to you. The money came from a loan that was taken out in my name, without my knowledge or permission. What? That's impossible. I showed her the loan documents and explained everything I'd discovered. As I talked, I watched her face go through a series of emotions: confusion, disbelief, then slowly understanding. Oh my God, she whispered. I had no idea. I swear to you, Ethan, I thought they were using their own money. But you didn't question where 2 people on a fixed income suddenly got $150,000. She looked down at her hands. I wanted to believe it was possible. I wanted the fairy tale wedding so badly that I didn't ask the questions I should have asked. Samantha, this loan is in my name, which means I'm legally responsible for paying it back. Unless I report it as fraud, which means Mom and Dad could go to jail. You can't do that, she said immediately. They're our parents. They committed identity theft against me. They forged my signature. They used my credit to fund your wedding without asking me. But they did it for me. They were trying to help me build my career. They did it to me. They stole from me to give to you. Can't you just help out with the payments? Until my influencer income picks up? I stared at her in disbelief. Are you seriously asking me to pay for a wedding that I wasn't even consulted about with money that was stolen from me? It's not stolen if you agree to pay it back. Samantha, listen to yourself. You're asking me to become complicit in my own victimization. I'm asking you to help your sister achieve her dreams. What about my dreams? What about my financial goals? What about my right to make my own decisions about my money and my credit? You make good money, you can afford it. That's not the point. The point is that nobody asked me. Nobody gave me a choice. You all just decided that my financial future was worth sacrificing for your wedding. She was quiet for a long moment, staring at her laptop screen. Finally, she looked up at me with tears in her eyes. If you report this to the police, you'll ruin Mom and Dad's lives, and you'll destroy my wedding. Is that really what you want? What I want is for someone in this family to acknowledge that what happened to me was wrong. What I want is for someone to take responsibility for the crime that was committed against me. What I want is to not be treated like an ATM machine that exists solely to fund other people's dreams. We don't treat you like that, don't you? When was the last time anyone in this family asked me what I wanted? When was the last time anyone considered how their decisions might affect me? She didn't have an answer for that. I'll give you 1 week, I said finally. 1 week to figure out how to handle the loan payments without involving me. If Mom and Dad can come up with a plan to take full responsibility for the debt they created, I won't involve the police. And if they can't? Then I'll do what I have to do to protect myself. I left her sitting there, staring at her wedding photos, probably realizing for the first time that her fairy tale was built on a foundation of fraud and betrayal. The week that followed was torture. My parents called me dozens of times, alternating between apologies and guilt trips. They offered to sell their house, to take out a second mortgage, to do anything to avoid having the loan traced back to their identity theft. But every solution they proposed involved me either taking on part of the financial responsibility or agreeing not to pursue criminal charges. They still didn't understand that this wasn't about the money. It was about respect, trust, and the basic principle that you don't commit crimes against people you claim to love. On Friday, exactly 1 week after my ultimatum, I got a call from Jennifer Walsh. Ethan, I have some interesting news. I've been contacted by an attorney representing your cousin Marcus. Marcus has a lawyer? Yes. And apparently, he's been arrested on unrelated fraud charges. His lawyer is trying to work out a plea deal, and Marcus wants to provide information about other crimes he's committed, including the fraud against you. What kind of information? He's willing to testify that your parents were willing participants in the identity theft. He has recordings of conversations where they discuss the plan. He also has copies of documents that show your father provided him with samples of your signature to practice forging. I felt sick. Recordings, audio recordings of phone calls, and at least one in-person meeting. Marcus apparently recorded everything as insurance, in case the plan went wrong and he needed to shift blame to your parents, so he was planning to throw them under the bus from the beginning. It looks that way. The question is, do you want to cooperate with the prosecution's case against Marcus? Because if you do, it's very likely that charges will also be filed against your parents. I closed my eyes and thought about everything that had happened over the past 2 weeks. The betrayal, the lies, the complete lack of remorse from my family, the way they'd continued to treat me like I was being unreasonable for not wanting to pay for their crime. Yes, I said finally, I want to cooperate. Are you sure? Because once this process starts, there's no going back. I'm sure. 2 days later, the police arrested my parents at their house. The local news covered the story because of the unusual nature of the crime. Parents committing identity theft against their own child. The headline read, "Couple charged with defrauding son to pay for daughter's wedding." Samantha's wedding, of course, was canceled. The venue, caterer, photographer, and everyone else involved demanded immediate payment for services already rendered. When my parents couldn't pay, several vendors filed lawsuits. The wedding dress was repossessed. The engagement photos that Samantha had been so proud of became evidence in a criminal case. Her social media following, which had been growing based on wedding content, evaporated overnight. Brands that had been considering partnerships distanced themselves from the scandal. Her dreams of becoming a major influencer died along with her fairy tale wedding. Marcus was sentenced to 5 years in prison for multiple counts of fraud and identity theft. My parents accepted a plea deal that got them 2 years of probation and full restitution, but only after they agreed to sell their house and liquidate their retirement accounts. The loan was removed from my credit report, and my financial standing was completely restored. But the damage to my family relationships was permanent. 6 months later, I got a promotion at work, partly because my handling of the identity theft case had impressed my supervisors with my integrity and attention to detail. I used the raise to move to a better apartment across town, far enough away that I wouldn't accidentally run into my family at the grocery store or coffee shop. Samantha tried to contact me several times, usually when she was having financial difficulties or relationship problems. She never apologized for expecting me to pay for her stolen wedding. She never acknowledged that what our parents did was wrong. She just wanted things to go back to the way they were before, when I was the reliable big brother who helped solve everyone's problems. My parents sent me a Christmas card with a note saying they forgave me for overreacting and hoped we could put this whole misunderstanding behind us. They still didn't understand that they were the ones who needed forgiveness, not me. I never responded to any of their attempts at contact. I'd learned that some betrayals are too deep to heal, and some relationships aren't worth preserving at any cost. Instead, I focused on building new relationships with people who understood concepts like consent, respect, and basic honesty. I found friends who wouldn't steal from me to fund their dreams. I found colleagues who valued integrity over convenience. I found a community of people who understood that love doesn't require allowing yourself to be victimized. A year later, I met Sarah at a financial literacy workshop I was teaching for young professionals. She was smart, independent, and had her own story of learning to set boundaries with family members who treated her like a personal bank. We bonded over our shared understanding that self-respect sometimes requires making difficult choices. "Don't you ever miss them?" she asked me one evening as we walked through the park near my apartment. "I miss the idea of them," I said. "I miss having a family that I could trust and rely on. But I don't miss being taken advantage of. I don't miss having my decisions made for me. I don't miss being treated like my only value was my ability to solve other people's financial problems." Do you think you'll ever reconcile with them? Maybe someday, if they ever truly understand what they did and take genuine responsibility for it. But I'm not holding my breath. Some people would rather be right than be honest. "Their loss," she said, squeezing my hand. And she was right. It was their loss. They traded a relationship with a son who would have gladly helped them in legitimate ways for a scheme that ultimately left them with nothing but legal bills and destroyed relationships. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if they'd just asked me to help with Samantha's wedding. I probably would have said yes to contributing something reasonable. I might have helped her build her influencer career in ethical ways. We could have been a family that supported each other's dreams instead of stealing from each other to fund them. But that would have required seeing me as a person with my own rights and choices, rather than as a resource to be exploited, and apparently that was asking too much. I learned that sometimes the most important word you can learn to say is no. No to being taken advantage of. No to having your identity stolen. No to being treated like your only value is what you can provide for others. No to letting family ties be used as emotional blackmail. And sometimes, the most important thing you can learn is that walking away from toxic people, even when they're family, isn't giving up on love. It's finally learning to love yourself enough to demand the respect you deserve. The day I signed the lease on my new apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years: complete control over my own life. No one else was making financial decisions for me. No one else was forging my signature or using my credit. No one else was treating my bank account like their personal emergency fund. For the first time in my adult life, I was truly free to make my own choices, pursue my own dreams, and build relationships based on mutual respect rather than financial obligation. And that freedom, I realized, was worth more than any family relationship built on lies, theft, and the expectation that love means allowing yourself to be victimized. Some bridges are meant to be burned, especially when they're leading you back to people who see you as nothing more than a means to fund their fantasies. I chose to build new bridges instead, ones that led to people who valued me for who I was, not what I could provide. That choice, difficult as it was, turned out to be the best investment I ever made.